thank you for listening to The Bo's Nose, a podcast about QI Roberts Junior Senior High School in Putnam County, Florida. I'm your host, Mr. Bose, and today we'll be talking with special guests from our classics class. Welcome and thank you for joining me today. Please introduce yourselves to our listeners.
Hi, my name's Autumn Patterson-Case, and I'm a senior.
Hello, I'm Malachi Dixon. I'm also a senior.
I'm Savannah Patterson-Case, and I am also a senior.
Podcast starts with the same three questions. First one is, favorite subject or topic in school, and why?
Okay, I think that my favorite subject would be classical, but usually I'm like an English person.
For me right now, it's really media studies because I'm just having a lot of fun in it.
Yeah, for me, like right now, it's also media studies. Like that's been a really fun class to be able to like dive into like something that we might not think about whenever it comes to like movies and TV shows.
That's awesome. Those are some of our newer classes here that we're offering at QI, so that's great. So what's your favorite QI story or tradition?
I would just say like the pep rallies, because I know like that's not really a tradition, but it's always fun every year to get into the gym with all of our classmates and cheer each other on.
My favorite story always tells are how, I don't know if it was a freshman or not, but they flushed down a brick down during the boys' toilet and like ruined the entire system for like a month.
My favorite story is probably in sophomore year. We got locked out of our Spanish class because there wasn't a sub. And of course, like us QI kids, we all went in there and we just studied. Like we didn't even do anything like crazy. We literally just sat and did our work.
Remember that. So next question, if you could have coffee with anyone dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I would probably have coffee with Jennifer Aniston. I just think she's really cool, and I really enjoy like early 2000s rom-coms, which she's in a lot of those.
I'd probably do it with Megan Thee Stallion because she's really educated. Like she has a degree in health science, and she's just really fun to be around.
For me, I think I would choose Emma Chamberlain because she's like the queen of coffee. So like she has like her own coffee company and everything, and I really want to try that. But then also like I think she's just like a really cool person, and like her recent like YouTube videos have like really been like inspiring, I guess.
Great. So last question before we get into talking about the class. Quality, integrity, respect. Which one and why?
I think quality would be like my most important one, I guess, just because, you know, I don't know. It's like quality. Okay.
I'd go with respect because, I mean, there's always quality to something, but respect, you can't not be like respectful towards someone and expect good things from it.
I think I would also have to go with quality, just because like I hold myself to like a high standard like with my work and like other people as well.
Oh, great answers. So as we get into it, first things first, tell us about the class. What is it? What is it about?
Okay, so like classical studies is basically we study we've been studying like for our AICE exams, but last year once we were like done, we like deep dove into like Inferno. So we talked about Alexander the Great, we talked about the Aeneid and Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey, and we also talked about Athens and Sparta, which is like all very interesting, but I'm really excited to like get into the more like unique stuff about like classical studies. So like I said, we went into Inferno last year, and this year I think we're going to do more like Greek tragedy and stuff. It just makes me feel like an intellectual, which is super nice. And yeah, it's like a really fun class.
We're just a bunch of nerds playing with vegetables, sticking carrots into potatoes, and reenacting the Iliad.
Yeah, that was an assignment. But yeah, I really enjoy the class and like getting, because we've always taken like just regular history classes, so it's really interesting to see like a different, you know, besides like U.S. history or European history. It's interesting to like dive into, you know, Greek history and, you know,
actual stories rather
Yeah.
than just hear about racist people.
Yeah.
So, how does this class, because it is an ACE class, how does this ACE class kind of compare to your other classes, mostly in, like, not content, but, like, the class itself? Like, why is it unique, or is it unique?
I think it's unique because, like, we get to explore, like, other topics that we haven't been exposed to before. But then also, Miss Bose, like, she teaches it, like, in a really, like, interesting way. And, like, it might go, like, kind of fast, but I feel like that's, like, the beauty of it because you're not, like, stuck on one thing for, like, so long. And, like, I feel like some other classes, it can seem, like, very repetitive or whatever. But with this one, it feels like every day we're, like, doing something different. Like, it's not just stagnant.
I feel like with this class, it's adding a lot of context to things we talk about every day, but don't really know what we're referencing. Like Dante's Inferno, we might talk about like hell, but we're not talking about like the layers of Inferno and saying like why does someone believe in like lying is a sin or infidelity is a sin. So it adds a lot of context and interesting perspective into it.
I think that the class like varies from a lot of the other ACE classes just because of like what Miss Bose does with the class. It's very interactive. And she's always been like that, but especially with classics, we're able to like have fun with it and make jokes, and it's really like fun to actually understand, the joke. So
That's good. And so, just for our listeners, the ACE exam is actually in November, where most of our normal classes we're used to them being in May. So, what is that kind of like having the exam? 3 months into the school year?
So it wasn't too bad because those of us in A level, we took the class last year. So it was a little stressful having to cram for 4 separate papers, but it wasn't like awful or anything. It was just like studying for the exams, like wasn't too bad or anything. Like in the beginning of the year, we crammed for the first 2 papers, which we did last year. We went over that last year, but we didn't take the exam. And so it allowed us to deeper dive into it, I guess, which was nice. As opposed to if we took the exam last year, I feel like we would have been a little bit less prepared. But then A level, it was nice to be able to get more context for Athens and Sparta. And then we went over the Iliad and the Odyssey. Which was cool to do, but I think it wasn't something that stressed us out so much because Miss Bose was okay, here's what you need to know. But then it was it's definitely a lot more stressful because it is in November as opposed to May, but it wasn't something that was undoable.
I mean, yeah, even though we did technically cram, she still went in depth and gave us time to breathe, and we had review days before the exams, we'll play that fly swatter game, or just do flashcards so we actually have time to, take a breath and analyze what we're doing rather than just, here's all the information, go up.
Yeah, I had just a little bit of a different experience because I didn't take A level or AS level last year, so I had to cram for both AS and A level, but it was still really fun and interactive again. And Miss Bose is she's a really great teacher, and yeah.
That's great. I think you guys have really portrayed the class well based on what I've heard you talk about the class and how much you all enjoy it. So that takes me to my next question, which is why did you choose to take the class?
So at the end of sophomore year, Miss Bose put out a Canvas announcement, and she was like, hey, I'm going to be doing this classical studies class, and I didn't really want to do any other electives, so I was like, okay, I'll try this out. I didn't really know what it was going to be about. I had an inkling that it was going to be about Greek stuff, which I was I've always been kind of interested in that. So I decided to pick that, and then I'm very glad that I decided to go with that elective.
I actually didn't choose the class. They put me in it because I chose psychology, but they didn't put me in it. However, I really do like they put me in that class because I stayed in it because we started Socrates, which is no longer on the ACE exam. It was very interesting just being told all the funny stuff that's just stupid about it. rather than just being told facts about psychology?
Yeah. So I chose to take it because last year, I wanted to be in classics, but they put me into psychology, which was fine. I had a good year, but, you know, hearing from everyone else in my friend group, like, all the stories and just not, like, understanding what they were talking about made me feel a little left out. But I'm glad that I decided to take it this year.
And so is this definitely a class you'd recommend to the fellow juniors and seniors? Or rising
Yes,
juniors and seniors?
definitely.
Yeah.
You'll have like so much fun. It's like, it's not just, oh, here's what happened. It's like, you will crack jokes. You will literally, it's my favorite class, like definitely throughout all of high school.
Savannah Larry makes memes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I make a bunch of memes about it, so.
Next question. What is your favorite part of the class, or what's your most memorable part or best story from the class?
So my favorite, like, memory would be when we were learning about the Iliad and we were talking about Achilles and how he was just, like, being really petty. And he, like, sat in his tent and he was, like, wrapped in a blanket or something. And we just called it, like, the Achilles burrito. It's really funny. And it's actually a really funny picture, so.
My favorite memory comes from last year where we're talking about the context of Dante's Inferno. We're talking about St. Augustine, which Savannah makes a stupid meme about him swimming across the sea.
God.
Yeah,
Not even
that was
on a boat,
fun.
he was just swimming to find St. Augustine, the city.
Yeah, my favorite thing was also from last year. Grant and we won like the costume contest or whatever, and we didn't even have a costume. I literally stole someone's crown and I pretended to be Olympias and he was Philip for Alexander the Great's parents. And I held like a snake like on my stomach because there's like a story of like her and a snake. But that was a lot of fun.
That's great. So if a student wants to know more about the class, how can they find out more?
Oh gosh.
I guess you could ask us if you really want to, but you could always just go to Miss Bose or even Mr. Bose, who I think knows a little bit about it.
Or Mr. Theobald, he checked the class.
Oh, yeah, and our principal, Mr. Theobald, he took the class last year.
I think you can obviously like talk to anyone who has the class or has had the class, but I think maybe you could like look up like some stuff if you've heard like what we've been talking about, like the Iliad or the Odyssey. If you do plan on taking the class, maybe get a little bit of extra knowledge before you join.
Yeah.
Awesome. So before I let you go, because I know you're anxiously awaiting something this afternoon, what media recommendations do you have for our listeners? Books, podcasts, TV shows?
Okay. Favorite media, I would think a podcast. It's called, what is it called? 1 second. It's called Late Night Drive with Ellie Schnitt. It's more like a girl talk type of thing, but I really like it, so if you're into that.
Mine would be another podcast just called Sid and Olivia Talk Crap. It's a comedic one that commentates on like modern society, especially like there's one talks about like the male podcast is funny enough about this podcast. That was probably one of my favorite episodes of it.
My podcast, as you can tell, we listen to a lot of podcasts. But mine would be Radio Lab from WNYC Studios. It's kind of like a investigative journalism thing, which is something that I'm super interested in. They talk about a bunch of stuff, and even though I don't consider myself a STEM girly, they like talk about like a lot of sciencey stuff, and it makes me like be able to understand just like stuff that's like going on in the world and everything. It's really interesting.
Those are some great recommendations. Thank you for being here with me. Listeners, if you like the podcast, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you can catch future episodes, and be sure to give QI Student Government a follow on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date on future episodes and happenings around QI. If you feel we've earned it, please rate and review us on your podcast player of choice and share with a friend. Thank you, Knights, and remember, excellence in all endeavors.